the capital of the Jewish people. And they had a very well-defined purpose. We have followed his star and have come to worship him. This is incredible. These non-Jewish men had traveled from far away and came. With a simple but firm purpose, we have come to worship him. Although in the illustrations of the birth these men look very appropriate for the scene, their presence is the strangest thing you could imagine. They don't fit reality. It's like seeing a man talking on a cell phone in a photo from World War II. You would say, something doesn't fit. And that's right, non-Jewish men were not supposed to be looking for the king of the Jews to worship him. But this is how God shows us his grace. These unexpected men represent all the people from all the nations of the world who are thousands of miles from Bethlehem who have been called to worship the King of Kings who was born among the Jews. Because this is what God does. God calls unexpected people to his kingdom. The scripture already said it in Psalm 22:27. All the earth will recognize the Lord and return to him, all the families of the nations will bow before him. Or Psalm 86:9. All the nations you made will come and bow down to you, Lord. They will praise your holy name. 705. In the events that surrounded the story of the birth of Christ, representatives of all the nations of the earth could not be missing who have been insistently and decisively seeking the King to worship him. This is the reality of our King, because one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So that day, people unknown to the Jews were looking for the King of the Jews to worship him. Because God calls unsuspected people into his kingdom. That day, the people in power were surprised and scared. It tells us that King Herod was troubled by this unexpected quest, and immediately he began to plan how to find this supposed king who was potentially coming to dethrone him. So he called together from among the people all the chief priests and teachers of the law, and asked them where the Christ was to be born. They answered him, that in Bethlehem of Judea, a small town that was about 8 kilometers from Jerusalem. And they repeated what the prophet had said hundreds of years before. Matthew 2:6. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, you are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a prince who will be the shepherd of my people Israel. There was no doubt, the King of Jews, the Christ, must have been born in Bethlehem. Herod was 8 kilometers away and was not able to go look for him. The biblical scholars were just a few kilometers away and did not go looking for him. These enigmatic and unsuspected men were the only ones who were determinedly searching for the king born to worship him. Because God calls unexpected people to his kingdom, Herod secretly called the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said to them, Go and find out about that child, and as soon as you find him, tell me so that I too can go and worship him. Apparently Herod also wanted to worship him. He expressed it this way to the wise men. But it was all part of a plan to put an end to any threat against his hegemony. He wanted them to locate the child but not to worship him, but to annihilate him, which did not happen because the wise men were warned. In a dream of Herod's perverse purposes, the wise men continued on their way to Bethlehem, being guided by this astronomical phenomenon that specifically pointed them to the place where the child was. And when they arrived, the scripture tells us in Matthew 2:11, when they arrived at the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. They opened their chests and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Jesus was no longer in a manger, but in a house, and when they saw the child they prostrated themselves, that is, they bowed with their faces to the ground, and worshipped. And they presented their gifts, gold, frankincense and myrrh, gifts, for their cost, worthy of a king. 706. The men had reached the end of a long journey and had